Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another episode of the Destroyer Pilot's Manifesto, the series that aims to teach you everything you need to know about the various different destroyers in EVE Echoes. Now, today's intro is being filmed from suburban Bulawayo. I know a lot of you guys have shown a bit of interest in sort of the town and the scenery, so I thought that whilst I was out doing some deliveries and some run-around errands this morning, I would just stop and record the intro for this afternoon's video. So, this is it. This is suburban Bulawayo. Not all that much to see, really. As you'll note, most of the houses are behind walls. That's just a common thing out here that I found actually really interesting when I first moved out from the UK, because obviously I'm used to sort of terraced houses with little gardens in front of them, whereas here a house tends to be a fairly large plot of land with a house in the middle and a wall around the outside. Now, ultimately, another question that a lot of people have been asking recently in my intros is, how come you're wearing a jacket? I thought that, you know, Africa was supposed to be hot. Zimbabwe especially is quite a hot country, yes? Well, yeah, for the most part. But an interesting fact about Bulawayo is that due to its elevation and geographical location, it's actually pretty temperate. In fact, my hometown in southeast Kent in the UK and Bulawayo share fairly equivalent, you know, sort of yearly maximums and minimums. The highest temperatures and the lowest temperatures that you'll find in both of those locations are actually fairly similar. And right now, because of course Zimbabwe is in the southern hemisphere, it's right in the middle of our winter. We're just coming into winter. Our coldest months are basically May, June and July. Sometimes August tends to be quite cold, and then it heats right the heck up for October, which is often referred to as suicide month out here, because it is that ridiculously hot. Anyway, enough about Zimbabwe. As I said, I will be doing a short little mini-series about life out here eventually, when I get around to filming enough of it to collate together into an episode. Today's episode of the Destroyer Pilot Manifesto is going to be looking at the Cormorant Navy Issue, one of the Caldari destroyers. Now, I know destroyers are kind of in a bit of a weird place right now. We're just about to have the balance patch, obviously, that is going to be giving them things like speed boosts and a couple of fixes here and there, which is why I've been trying to steer away a little bit from doing sort of fitting guides and ship reviews and that kind of thing, because a lot of them are subject to change right now. That said, the Cormorant Navy Issue is one of the ones that I feel is actually pretty stable. It's not going to get any worse, certainly, in the next patch. Let the car go past. It's not going to get worse in the May balance update, but it is probably going to get better, as it's going to have an increased capability of speed tanking, and we'll discuss that throughout this video. Do stick around as well, because at the latter half of the video I will be talking about this week's Combo Omega giveaway. So, with all that said and done, if you do enjoy the video, let me know by hitting a like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding the notification bell to never miss an update, and let me know in the comments section down below what ships and topics you would like me to cover in future content. If you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so by joining us on Patreon, or indeed checking out our Redbubble merchandise store, where you can buy awesome t-shirts like the one that I'm wearing right now, and the mask that I have in my pocket in case I need to go and do some shopping later on. Anyway, that all said and done then, let's talk about the Cormorant Navy Issue. The Cormorant Navy Issue is the Caldari State's Tech 5 military destroyer, so you'll find it in the Caldari State ship tree, up on the destroyer branch at Tech Level 5, and of course alongside that is the Cormorant Garden, which we've covered in other videos elsewhere. Let's have a look at the Cormorant Navy Issue. Now, I actually really like the Cormorant hull. It's a particularly sleek design, but it still has that Caldari sort of militaristic ruggedness to it, which I find really cool. I also like the fact that when you warp and jump with this, the wings at the back fold down, and the 6 modules, 3 down each side of the ship on the flanks there, actually tilt and fold away as well, which is a pretty cool little thing to watch, and I like it when the ships have those kind of animations. We also have the Halorange skin, which is the Crimson Harvest Halloween event. Now, like with the Thrasher Fleet Issue and some of the other Fleet Issue, Navy Issue ships, I actually really like the Halorange skin on this one, that sort of black and grey digital camouflage on it, along with the purple and vibrant orange detailing. It's definitely a Halloween-y themed skin, and I really, really like it. If I'm going to fly one of these, I'm ultimately going to take that skin, and that's the one I'll use. But anyway, enough about how it looks, let's talk about how it flies. So the Cormorant Navy Issue has a fitting profile of 4 high slots, which is not as many as I would like it to have. I do think that the standard Cormorant should have 3, the Cormorant 2 should have 4, and the Cormorant Navy Issue should have 5 high slots, with a slight increase to its power grid to accommodate that 5th high slot, and a slight reduction, very slight reduction, of its ship bonuses to make sure that the DPS doesn't shoot up too high. Though in fairness, I think the Cormorant Navy Issue, if you just gave it an additional high slot, would still actually be a pretty solid and well well-balanced ship, even if you didn't change those stats. But again, we're getting off topic here. We then have 3 mid-slots. This is the point where the destroyers actually start to become useful, because you get a decent amount of tackle, E-war, and other options there in your mid-slots now to add a little bit of versatility, creativity, and ultimately just straight-up utility to a fit. The 3 low slots also, I think, is a bit low, but I can handle that. I think that ultimately if you were to increase the high slots to 5 and keep it as it is otherwise, things would be pretty okay here with the Cormorant Navy Issue. 3 low slots means you do have to kind of decide what you want to focus on, whether you want weapon upgrades or additional tank or propulsion, or like a little split of all 3, etc, etc. Finally, we have 2 of the combat rigs and 2 engineering rigs, which again does limit kind of the versatility and functionality of this ship. But again, we'll come to that later. Cargo hold is pretty sizable, 850 cubic meters. If you've been flying frigates up to this point, that is a humongous increase in cargo. We've got a power grid of 72 megawatts, which is large enough to fit everything we need, with room to spare. Not quite enough to start cramming in oversized modules, really, without causing issues, but it's a nice, sizable power grid that means you're not struggling to decide what you want to fit in it. We also then have a capacitor bank of 575 gigajoules, decent recharge time and recharge rate, which makes sense. It's a Caldari ship. Caldari ships do tend to have fairly decent capacitor banks, right up there with the Amar ones. Our defences are also stereotypically Caldari. They may be lower overall than some other ships, but they have massive shield tanks. Here it's a 1650 HP shield with 1114 armour and 1130 on structure. So you can see the armour and the structure are quite weak on this, but the shield is fairly sizable for a ship of this particular tech level. And that's kind of the Caldari staple. Big shields, weak armour, weak structure. Looking at the rest of its stats though, the other Caldari telltale sign here is the signature radius up at 61.5 meters. Those large shield banks come at the cost of signature radius. Obviously, when you've got a very large shield generator, you tend to show up on scanners a lot easier. Your radiation basically is much easier to spot in space. And we do have a fairly slow flight velocity. This is actually the slowest of the 4 Navy military issue destroyers. So the Cormorant, the Catalyst, the Coercer, and the Thrasher fleet issue Navy issue. This is the slowest of the 4 at 246 meters per second, and the largest at 61.5. Does make up for that with the tank, but yeah, again, this is obviously before the balance patch. We are expecting that we're going to get a bit of flight velocity increase for destroyers across the board as well, so we should be moving a little bit faster so that we're not outpaced by every cruiser and battle cruiser in EVE Echoes. Solid scan resolution too, 499mm, is pretty good. Low mass is literally, let me just count the zeros on that and double check my maths. Yes, it's 1.7 million kgs, which is a very low mass, but it's got quite a high inertia of 2.0, so this is quite a cumbersome vessel. Again, something I'd like to see them do on destroyers is actually just lower the amount of mass. The inertia modifier could also be lowered instead, but lowering the mass I think helps out when you're using things like afterburners, micro warp drives, helps you reach your top speed that little bit faster, and it's just a way to help these ships out in the agility class. Anyway, let's have a look at the trait description. Now, as one of the gunboat destroyers, it has a roll bonus of a 25% increase to the range of its small turret system of choice, in this case, small railguns, obviously. So we get 25% small railgun optimal range. Then we get bonuses to small railgun operation, giving us an additional 5% small railgun damage and 7.5% small railgun optimal range. That's 25% additional damage and 37.5 additional optimal range if you're going to train that all the way up to 5, which quite frankly you should. Now, being optimal range increases there, this does really help the snub-nosed railguns, almost said blasters, really does help snub-nosed railguns out, because their biggest problem is their incredibly short optimal range. So increasing that optimal range does really help those and helps you keep the snub-nosed railguns in range of your target. And obviously if you're training into small railgun operation and small railgun upgrade, you are also going to be increasing your optimal range and effectiveness through those skills as well. Finally then, Destroyer Command gives us 5% increase to our shield and 5% scan resolution, so that's 25% additional shield and 25% additional scan resolution at full training. So you're actually looking at almost 750mm of scan resolution, and that shield goes up to over 2000. So that's fairly tanky there for a destroyer. It means that the Cormorant Navy Issue, it's slow, it's fairly tanky on the shields, but it also has pretty good damage application as far as your snub-nosed railguns go, and obviously snub-nosed railguns are the highest DPS weapon in the game, and this is one of the few ships out there that can actually apply those well against a target, thanks to those additional range bonuses. So, with that in mind, let's have a look at fitting this. The wonderful thing about the Cormorant Navy Issue is that it works really well with either the snub-nosed railguns or the rifled railguns. Now the first fit we're going to look at here is the snub-nosed railgun brawling fit, because this is the one I prefer to use if I'm going into PvE. In PvP, the railguns, the rifled railguns, plus an extra web rather than the Nosferatu can be an interesting PvP choice that helps you out if you're going up against other frigates and destroyers, just allows you to keep them at range, and if they're trying to use the short-ranged weapons like snub-nosed railguns, autocannons, and pulse lasers, that kind of thing, you are able to outrange them and still apply a decent amount of damage. Now anyway, the snub-nosed fit that I'm showcasing here, we are using 4 dealer small snub-nosed railguns, meta level 5 here. This entire fit is incredibly cheap, and it will comfortably clear all the way up to Tech 7, Tech 8, even Tech 9 encounters if you're careful enough. So, this makes a very cheap encounter running ship. Definitely, Tech 7 and Tech 8 are very comfortable in this. Tech 9 does prove a little problematic, but it can be done. I'll be showcasing a Tech 7 later on, using this exact meta level 5 fit. Obviously, if you're going into Tech 8s and Tech 9s, you probably want to go up to meta level 8 or meta level 11, where possible for dead space gear, and you may want to increase the rigs as well. But ultimately, this entire ship, from the hull, plus the rigs, plus all the fittings, I think came to just over 10 million. It's not an expensive ship at all. Anyway, so we've got the small snub-nosed railguns here, and you can see that thanks to the bonuses that the Cormorant Navy Issue has to railgun optimal range, we're actually sitting at 3.59 kilometers optimal range, and that's with me only having railgun skills at small railgun operation 553 and small railgun upgrade at 5.4. So I still need to train into the upgrade, which is the one that actually increases that optimal range even further. And that's because obviously I spread between cannons, missiles, drones, railguns, lasers, and even decomposers. Yes, I actually have decomposer skills. Anyway, the damage on these things is pretty monstrous. 68.13 for a meta level 5 small turret is as high as you are going to get, and there are buffs coming in the next patch as well for railguns, which, again, it's just mad to see those increases there to the damage. Now for the low slots, I've gone here for a Smuggler Small Afterburner. That's our propulsion mod, it helps us speed tank. Again, this is a fairly slow, fairly large ship as far as destroyers go, so speed tanking is not exactly the right term. You're mitigating the damage that you would take by being fast enough and small enough to avoid most of the hits, but you've got pretty good shields which are going to help you you're going to have a lot of ability to soak up any incidental damage you do take. And that's why we then have a Settler Small Shield Booster. This is going to be giving us their 81 additional shield back every 3.31 seconds, not 4.6, that's the power grid requirement. Speaking of power grid requirement, there is a fair amount of power grid here left, which you can either fill up by using the rifled railguns, which do use a little bit more, or you can play around with trying to fit some of the larger other modules in there as well, like extenders, that kind of thing. I personally find that the Settler Small Shield Booster is more than adequate for what we need. Then I pop in a basic magnetic field stabilizer just to top that up and give us a little bit of additional damage there. Obviously it's a 5% damage bonus for having it fit, and a 4.01 reduction to the activation time of my railguns. Then I can activate it to increase that to a 16% reduction to activation time, and a 20% increase to the damage bonus, which is pretty big. It's a big bonus there with that active. For the mid-slots, I've gone for a Mark 7 Warp Scrambler, an Interruptive Stasis Webifier, and an Up-Ear Small Energy Nosferatu. Now, the ones of these that I think are most useful is the Nosferatu, because that helps us keep the shield booster running more frequently. It helps us maintain capacitor stability, basically. And I like to have the Interruptive Stasis Webifier just to slow down any other targets. Not because we need them to be going slower because we're missing, because actually, you know, the snub-nosed railguns have excellent tracking to them. It's more to stop a ship outrunning us. And that's also why I have the Warp Scrambler. It is very rare, but in PvP, obviously I want to be short range anyway, I want to lock someone down, and I'd like to be able to switch off any micro warp drive they happen to have. I then use the stasis webifier to reduce any afterburner speed they have. It's simply just a case of making sure that if you land on an enemy and you can tackle it, it's not going anywhere before you can put a severe amount of DPS on it. Now, obviously an interceptor does more DPS than this does, but an interceptor also has a lot less health. We're sitting at 6,801 effective hit points, 2,788 of which are in the shields, 1,559 in armor, and 1,521 in structure. So you are fairly tanky. You'll find that if you go up against other smaller frigates, this will take on an assault frigate no trouble. If you can land on that assault frigate, tackle it, you will do okay with this, as long as you can apply your damage nice and easily and stop it running away. And some of the interceptors you can out DPS as well, especially if you use that magnetic field stabilizer to push that up a bit further. And this is, of course, with us running here on prototype rigs. I've gone for 2 burst aerator prototypes for the activation time adjustments. We get faster firing snub noses, which gives us an increase to the DPS. And on the other side, I've gone for an auxiliary thruster and a polycarbon engine housing. Basically, that pushes our basic flight velocity up to 364.08 and drops our agility low enough that we get a warp preparation time of 3.19. This helps us maintain a decent orbit. It means we accelerate and decelerate nice and quickly, and we can come to a new heading very, very easily. That's the main point here. It's quite an agile ship, or as agile as you can get a Cormorant Navy Issue at this point, using those rigs. Ultimately, yeah, if you want to take this a bit more seriously, go into meta level 1 rigs, or as high as you want, really. You can push this surprisingly high in content if you're willing to increase the cost. But this ship right here, as I said, it's about 10 million ISK. It's a very cheap ship that will quite comfortably earn its cost back in 2 or 3 encounters. That's the joy and the advantage here, I feel, of flying destroyers. You're using cheaper skills than cruisers, so you can have a bit more versatility. Like me, you can have small railguns, small lasers, whatever the heck you fancy in there. If you're going for small ships and you like Caldari ones, obviously I'd recommend going small railguns and small missiles as your 2 main options. Plus you can then train into your destroyer skills, frigate skills, and still not have spent as much as someone else would have done trying to skill into cruisers. That's the real advantage here, I think, of flying destroyers. Plus, I quite like the challenge of having to, take a destroyer into a Tech 9 encounter and still managing to come out the other end of it. But basically, what we're doing here is keeping the cost down and giving us a nice weapons platform that we can take into combat. So let's showcase that. So the Cormorant Navy Issue that you're seeing on screen now is using that meta level 5 fit that we just looked at. All of these modules are meta level 5, and the rigs are basic prototype rigs. This means the cost of this ship is, as I said, 10 million ISK, approximately. 10 million ISK. The encounter that I'm showcasing this in right now is a Tech 7 encounter worth 20 million ISK. So once I've completed this encounter, this Cormorant Navy Issue will have made its cost back, and then its cost again as profit, a pure 100% profit, which I think is a really powerful thing to showcase. Anyway, now of course you can turn around and say, well yes, but I'm flying a cruiser that can do that same level content and actually do it faster and can do a little bit higher as well. Or I'm using a battleship that can do considerably higher level content. And yes, I see where you're coming from with that. But a cruiser and a battleship are going to cost a lot more for both the hull and for the fittings. And you're going to have to pay an awful lot more for the skills. If I'm flying a destroyer, for example, I'm going to be training things like small railgun operation, small railgun upgrade. Compare small railgun upgrade to medium railgun upgrade. Look at the skill point difference in those 2 skills. Also, look at the actual cost required to open up those particular skills for training. Then have a look at the cost of the hulls and the cost of the modules. Destroyers, if a destroyer can do the same content as a cruiser, that means the destroyer is a more effective cost-wise option in order to do it. Something like a Stabber Fleet Issue is going to cost you a lot more than 10 million ISK in order to do the same level of content. It's also going to cost you considerably more skill points in order to train into it to actually get that effectiveness out of it. That is the big advantage of destroyers. Not just that the hulls are cheap, but also that the skills are cheap in terms of skill points to actually train into. And of course that means that once you've trained into all of the skills you want for a particular ship, so for example here, if I've trained all of my destroyer skills up to maximum, and I've trained all of the railgun skills to maximum, compared to a cruiser pilot, they're not going to have reached that point yet. So I'm going to be able to start moving into missiles, or lasers, or cannons, or things like that, and start flying a variety of different hulls, whereas the cruiser pilot is going to still be stuck training into that first hull. It's just a key point there, I think, for destroyers. I get that they're not necessarily ideal, and I'm not going to say that they're the most effective, but they are certainly some of the most cost-effective ways of doing content in the game. And also, if you lose a destroyer, it's a lot cheaper to replace. As I mentioned, I think it cost me 7 plex worth of insurance to rebuild this after I lost it to a gate camp. But anyway, you can see that we are quite comfortably here going through this particular encounter. I've just taken out the logistics Gistum Bellicose Covert Ops. That's the one that was healing up the others. It wasn't attacking me, so I'm getting rid of a ship that's not actually doing anything to me. That means I've taken quite a bit of damage in order to do so. So you can see I've dropped down to about 65% shield and about 50% there on the capacitor. Now I'm going up against the Gistum Bellicose that is hitting me with a Nosferatu and a Target Painter. That Target Painter is increasing my signature radius and making me easier to hit for those medium ships, and the Nosferatu is of course reducing my capacitor personally. So once this ship goes down, I'm pretty much clean sailing for the rest of this wave. It's kind of a key point. I like to go after the small ships first of all, because they apply their damage very well. I then either go after the logistics or the E-warship, depending, and then I will go basically in size order through the rest of this wave. And you can see that now that Gistum Bellicose, the one that is doing the E-war modules here, now that that's nearly dead, my shield's recharging, my capacitor is recharging, because I'm basically speed tanking around here. I'm still taking hits, it's not a true speed tank, but it's my shield booster and my capacitor is more than capable of keeping up with the damage. The speed tank is just reducing the damage that I would otherwise be taking. Now, this is before the May balance patch as well, and in the May balance patch, as problematic as that is for small ships, and I'm hoping that there are going to be some changes, we know that the destroyers are at least getting a somewhat, a somewhat sizable speed boost, which is actually going to help this thing speed tank that little bit better. It's still not going to be a true speed tank, but it is going to help mitigate even more of the incoming damage, which I think is pretty powerful. Anyway, so you can see here, a 10 million ISK ship is quite comfortably clearing a 20 million ISK encounter, so we're going to make a big profit off of this. And as I said, we can go up to tech level 8 and tech level 9, but that then requires increasing our modules up to meta level 8 and meta level 11 where possible, and you're going to need to have things like expert level skills at that point. So you do then go into a bit more of a cost barrier, but it's still going to be cheaper than a cruiser of equivalency. So I think that's kind of a key point there. Anyway, before we wrap this one up, I want to go over how I'm going to be doing my giveaways going forward, because you may remember that NetEase gives me each week 2 Combo Omega months to give away to 2 lucky winners. Now, I've been trying to decide how I want to standardise this going forward, so I don't just want to have to keep coming up with crazy ideas off the top of my head each time, because they have various different levels of engagement. Now, I know Geekerforta, who is an excellent content creator in the Eve Echoes community. If you're not already subscribed and watching his videos, check out the description down below. Geekerforta is one of the best content creators in Eve Echoes. Fantastic videos, both in the case of news and of ship fitting guides and all that kind of thing. Great guy to listen to. Excellent videos, great points, well worth your love and subscribing time. Go check him out. If you are already following Geekerforta, you'll know he does a community question of the week, where he asks his community basically a question, and then when he goes through those responses, he picks 2 of them to randomly each win a month of Combo Omega. I really like that concept and that idea. I just couldn't think of a way to do it myself that wasn't directly ripping that off and just doing his idea. So what I've come up with is basically going to require people to come and join the Cat Skull Discord, which quite frankly is kind of the point. Come join my Discord. We are a great bunch of guys. We love talking. I'm going to open a channel in that Discord called the Weekly Combo Omega Giveaway. And each week I will, in a video, name the subject matter. And what you're going to do is you're going to show me that subject matter. So this week I'm going to be doing destroyers. I want you to showcase a destroyer. You can draw a destroyer, you can take a screenshot of your destroyer, you can show a kill mail using your destroyer, that kind of thing. Just something that visual that is related to destroyers. I will go through that at the end of next week when I announce my next competition topic. I will go through all of the destroyer ones, and I will select 2 of those guys to win a month of combo Omega each. Then the week after that, we'll do something like, I don't know, cruisers or frigates, or it might be things like, you know, citadels or your favourite station. We'll just have fun doing different things with those. So this week, I want you to draw or screenshot something to do with destroyers. And I really just, you know, I want to keep this as positive as possible. So if you're going to put up something that's just like, lol, destroyers suck, that's not going to be counted as an entry. I just want it to be something constructive and positive, where you're having fun with destroyers, something cool that you've done with destroyers. I will pick 2 of those in the next giveaway to have won a month of combo Omega each. That does mean that today I will be going through our last giveaway, which was last Sunday's video, where I asked you each to tell me what you're enjoying on the test server. I will pick 2 of those guys, and I will respond to you on YouTube asking for your 11-digit character ID and in-game character name, so that I can get that sorted for you. Please do make sure you respond and check. If you're going to enter, please keep an eye on the channel for when I announce those winners, because I've had a few times now where people have won, I've contacted them to give them their prize, and they've just never gotten back to me, and that kind of makes me feel sad, because I'm trying to do some nice things, and I do end up losing that. It doesn't carry across for me. So, yeah. Make sure that this week you are joining our Discord, finding the Combo Omega competition channel, and showcase something really cool about destroyers. It could be like the Gisty Talwar here, you could do a screenshot of that, like this one here even. You can showcase you doing something in a destroyer, you can draw your favourite destroyer in Microsoft Paint or whatever. Just showcase destroyers, have a great time with it, and 2 of you will be lucky enough to win a month of Combo Omega each. Alright, well, that really does wrap things up. I'm kind of on the verge of rambling on at this point, so I'm going to call it off here. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's nice to be talking about destroyers again in sort of a positive way. I am looking forward to seeing what changes we get to destroyers in the future, both in terms of this balance patch and future balance patches. And of course, I will keep you all informed in regards to that. You know that I love my small ships. Any changes, any information that I get in regards to how small ships are going to operate, I'll be shouting from the rooftops, but I will of course cover other things like the cruisers, battle cruisers and battleships, etc. as well. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way to the end. Good luck to anyone who enters the competition. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.